Sohla here in the Food52 kitchen, and today I'm going to show you a fancy update on the diner classic scrambled eggs and toast. But I'm going to make it extra luxurious with a bunch of butter, creme fraiche, trout roe, and a little bit of maple. We're also going to make some brioche soldiers on the side for dunking. So these are like weekend eggs, lots of butter, a great way to start a slow Sunday. Once we scramble the eggs, they wait for no one. So we need to get a little bit of setup going before we even start touching our eggs. The first thing I'm gonna do is warm my bowls in a low oven. It's really nice because it helps the eggs stay warm while you eat them. So I'm gonna pop these in. I'm gonna toast my brioche first. I'm getting my pan preheated over like medium heat. So I'm using brioche, but use whatever rich bread. I think challah would be really good here too, but I love how buttery this is, and then we're gonna fry it in butter, so it's just like so much butter. So I want nice thick pieces of toast, so I have nice thick soldiers. I like to take the crust off because this is like when I want to pamper myself. I don't want to deal with the crust, but if you're cool with crust, go ahead and keep it. But either way, be sure to keep the crust because they make great breadcrumbs. Brioche is great for breading stuff because it gets really nice and golden very quickly. When I was a kid, actually, my dream was to always have an all-clad pan. Pan is getting warm. I'm gonna melt some butter. We're gonna wait until it gets nice and foamy and then add our brioche soldiers. I really love dunking eggs with these guys. My mom would always do this like on a Sunday when she wanted to treat us. Butter toasted bread like this. So we're just gonna wait until the butter gets nice and foamy and then pop our bread in there. The great thing about these All-Clad D3 pans is they heat up really fast and really evenly. So it's perfect for frying bread. You're gonna get a nice even toast across all of the pieces. So the reason why you wait for your butter to get foamy is butter has a mixture of fat and water. So when it gets foamy, you know that it's nice and hot. The great thing with butter is it does have like a built-in thermometer. It lets you know when it's time to fry. Unlike oil where you really have to watch it and wait for it to get shimmery. But we're getting a little fuzzy action, so let's add our bread. And it's gonna toast up pretty quickly. I'm gonna get this out of the way while my bread toasts and we're gonna scramble our eggs. So we're gonna crack our eggs, whisk it really well. I think 3 eggs is a really good amount for 2 people because we are gonna have a lot of butter and creme fraiche. It's gonna be super rich. So this is plenty. All right, 3 eggs. Gonna whisk it up with a bit of salt. A lot of chefs tell you to season your eggs at the end because they get tough, but that's kind of like one of these old chef's tales. When you add salt to eggs, it does start to look a little bit watery, but that's just because the salt begins to break down the protein immediately, but it's not gonna make it tough or watery. In fact, when you salt your eggs up to 15 minutes before you cook them, it's gonna make them more tender. So let me check on my brioche. They're still getting nicely browned. You know what? I think I can flip some of these guys. See how nice and evenly toasted that is? I didn't really have to move the pan around or do anything. And it's looking a little dry, so I'm gonna add another cube of butter. This meal is all about butter. It's just a way to eat butter. That's why it's kind of nice to have your butter cubed up like this so you can add it as you need. All right, whisk up the eggs. So you want to whisk it up really well so there's no streaks of white. If you do have any little bits of white left, it's gonna kind of be a little bit dry and curdly. We want a really nice, creamy, evenly cooked egg. So you gotta start by whisking it up. We're not trying to get any air in here. We just want to make sure everything's nice and homogenized. I'm feeling good. Okay, so let's see how this is going. Ooh, fantastic. I'm gonna turn this down for our eggs. So I don't want this side to continue getting too brown, so I'm gonna flip it over and we're just gonna set it aside so it stays warm. And then we're gonna move on to our scrambled eggs, the main event. I like to scramble my eggs in a saucier. This is actually one of my favorite pans because of the sloped sides. You can get in there with a whisk, so it's perfect for any time you're making something that requires a lot of whisking. So scrambled eggs, pudding, pastry cream, unglaze, bechamel, anything that requires a lot of whisking action, this is the pan I reach for. So I'm gonna start with like a tablespoon of butter, and we're gonna finish with more butter. And we're gonna, once again, we're gonna let this heat up until it gets nice and foamy. And then we're gonna put our eggs in there and whisk constantly. It's gonna go pretty quick. So whisk fast, make sure you get in all the corners. We want really small curds that are super creamy. So the way to do that is just vigorous whisking. There's no like real trick to it. I'm gonna grab my creme fraiche. We're gonna finish with that, so I just wanna make sure I have it handy for when we get there. And then we just wait. I love this because it's just eggs, but they really transform because of the way we're cooking it. Okay, so my butter is melted, foamy, eggs going in. So just keep it in constant motion. It's almost like we're making a custard, but with just eggs. And make sure you constantly get in there and get the sides. That's where you can end up with some dry bits. So as you keep whisking, it's gonna get thicker and thicker, just like a custard, and then you're gonna start seeing all these tiny little curds running through it. Some bigger curds are gonna try and form on the sides, but you're not gonna let it happen. You're gonna get in there with your whisk, get into those sloped sides, and break it up, because we want this to feel like really creamy and really soft. I know a lot of times when people see soft eggs like this, they think it's undercooked, but there's a difference between undercooked eggs and soft eggs. These are gonna be fully cooked, but because we're keeping them whisking the whole time, they're not gonna be like these big, fluffy curds. We're gonna have like a creamy sauce, almost like sabayon, but savory. What a way to start the day. Anytime you're doing any kind of sauce, this is like the best pan to use. And I think if you bake a lot, it's like indispensable because it's so great for any kind of custard, pudding, ice cream base, anything like that. Okay, we're getting thicker and thicker. I'm starting to see some little curds. That means we're close. It can go from like really creamy to overcooked pretty fast, so that's why you have to just stay vigilant, stay on top of it. You don't want to like get this far and then just overshoot, you know? It's scrambled eggs, but it feels really different and really fancy because of the technique. Okay, so we are really close. So now I'm gonna add a tablespoon of butter and whisk that in. And then we're gonna pull it off the heat and finish with our creme fraiche. If you don't have creme fraiche, you could just use a little more butter or maybe even sour cream. But I really like the tang that the creme fraiche brings. It kind of balances everything out. And it just like adds this extra creaminess that butter doesn't, because it has like a little bit more body, I feel. You're gonna like just see it go in front of your eyes from like sauce to looking more like scrambly. Okay, creamy, dreamy eggs. Let's turn off the heat. Now I'm gonna finish with a little bit of creme fraiche, and we're gonna plate it up. We're gonna get our warm plates, and this is like ready to go. Make sure that whoever you're dining with is at the table. The mimosa's poured. We're not wasting any time. Let me go get my warm plates. Our eggs are ready. There's no time to waste. So see how creamy and rich and like, oh, it's almost like the melted ice cream version of scrambled eggs, huh? It's like a sauce, you know? That's exactly what you want. It's gonna be perfect for dunking our brioche soldiers into. I've done this before with other stainless steel pans, but you often are left with like a film of egg. But with these All-Clad D3s, they're like practically non-stick. There's like no egg left behind. All right, so we're gonna get our soldiers ready to go, and we're gonna finish this up. We're gonna take these already fantastic, fancy eggs, level it up with some roe. Now you can go crazy here and use like sturgeon caviar, but it's also great with like trout roe, salmon roe, or you know, no roe at all. These eggs are fantastic just on their own, but the roe, I love it because it adds these little pops of briny saltiness. It's very nice against the creamy and very rich eggs. I also like to finish them with a little coarsely crushed black pepper, a little bit of crunch, a little bit of spice. This dish is inspired by this restaurant in LA called Animal, and they have these creamy eggs with roe and maple. And ever since I had it, I've been obsessed with this combo. So final drizzle with a little real pure maple syrup, just a little bit. The sweetness really brings out the richness in the eggs. It's nicely balanced with the salty roe. You don't need to get crazy, just a little bit, and it gives you those fancy diner vibes, you know? Now we dunk, that's all there's left to do. That's your little toast in there. I mean, you could use a spoon, but you probably don't even need one. These are so soft and creamy. You can just scoop them up with your bread. Super rich, creamy, buttery. I get butter in the eggs, butter in the brioche, and then the pops of roe really break it up. I love the cracked black pepper, and I think my favorite bit is the hint of sweetness from the maple. I really hope you try this. If you want to give this recipe a shot, head over to food52.com and make some fancy eggs for the weekend.